everyone. Welcome back to Talkin Shop with ShopSabre. Today, we're going to dive into somewhat of a game changer for anyone trying to grow their business, and that is building the right team. But first, I am your host, Brandon Bombardo, and as always, I am here with Nick Peters.
How's it going today?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. We're not going to build our team like the Minnesota Twins, though.
Why not?
Because they suck. There was 47 people at the game last night.
Were you there?
No, but I saw a picture of first pitch, and there was 47 people there. I zoomed in and counted every single one. But yeah, sorry.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
Do you got a nickel?
I feel like I heard this once before, but I forgot it already. No, I don't.
Oh, so you're Nicholas?
Yes. Wah, 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 wah.
I had to. I'm sorry.
Golly.
As I said, Nick Peters here with us, customer liaison extraordinaire. We're going to talk today. That's what we do.
Extraordinaire.
Yeah, extraordinaire.
You're going to talk today.
I'm going to do some talking. But we're going to talk about like when it's time to hire and who to bring on and how to train them so that your business can be the most productive. In our case, CNC operators, things like that. So you can run smooth. Smooth operator, right? If I had a button, I'd play it. It'd be smooth operator right now.
That's like 3 puns already in 2 minutes.
I know. I'm doing good today.
Good.
But obviously, whether you're a one-person shop ready to scale up, because there's a lot of businesses that start with me, myself, and I, and you have to grow, or you're a growing team. You know, there's a lot of businesses out there, and you're a team effort, and the team has to get bigger because there's just not enough of you to go around. So either way, you're trying to get more efficient, and I think this episode's going to be for you today. So tune in. But we're going to jump into some customer questions and comments first. As always, submitted by you, the users. We appreciate them. And I know, Nick, you brought 2 or 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I do have 3 of them today.
3 of them?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to provide some answers to the questions. So
Perfect.
let's fire away there, and then we'll jump into this week's episode on hiring the right help, building the team that gets it.
I'll be sure to give you great advice on how to hire my replacement next week.
Cool. I like it.
Question numero uno.
Like it.
Yeah, I've been practicing.
You're doing good.
Could you use your machine for different types of materials, or does it have to be MDF?
Like cutting, you mean?
What?
Yes. I think the question is basically asking if we can only cut MDF. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it must be. I don't know. That didn't come out right, did it?
No.
I mean, I think
I'm guessing the comment is from a video, is my guess, related to whatever we were showing. And yes, we could absolutely do more than MDF. I'm going to guess there was maybe an MDF door video or something like that. And of course, these machines are built to be versatile. And the bit itself is really the limitation, right? It's really what tool you're using will determine what material you're going to cut. There's different tools for different substrates, and therefore you want to make sure that you pick the right tool for the job, because the wrong bit can certainly make a difference. We're going to actually do an episode coming up in a few episodes here about tooling, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But switching materials is very common with this machine. In fact, that's one of the benefits of having a machine, is that you can jump from one material to another material with very little changeover other than a tool. So yes, the quick answer is you can cut a wide variety of materials.
Perfect. Moving on to question numero dos.
Okay.
What shows can we see you at this year? Before you answer, I have a comedy show coming up later this summer. We'll have more details on that later. It's a night of dad jokes with Nick.
Lord help us.
Sorry. What shows can we see you at this year?
This clown show all day. No, the answer on that one is, given the number of shows available, you can't really pick to go to all of them as much as we'd love to. So we've kind of limited our appearances to some of the bigger shows typically. And actually this year, we're going to be limiting ourselves to only one show in 2025, and that is going to be AWFS in Las Vegas. So we will be there. Though we do always offer, I want to make sure we call it out, that if you can't make that show or it just isn't convenient for you, we do always offer one-on-one private showings here at ShopSabre, where you can come and do a tour of our facility. We'll show off some of our production, operations, and we can talk about all your questions. You get a little bit more one-on-one time. I'm not a huge fan of shows, to be honest. simply because I never feel like I can give enough time and attention to the customers, because there's 100 people walking around your booth at any given time, and there's 3 or 4 of you. So
And you got to try to like balance talking to customers and then not like making people feel like you're ignoring them.
And that's my thing, is I feel cheesy because I'm always like, oh, hey, how you doing? Nope, sorry, got to go to this guy and say the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be that guy. I want to just like, hey, what can I help you with? And like, let's go through it, answer your questions. But then when I'm answering your questions, I feel like I'm ignoring 3 other people. So it's kind of a tough balance. Obviously, you can contact our sales team. We'll schedule a visit here. We'd love to meet you in person. But from a show standpoint, that's where you can find us this year, is AWFS 2025.
You know what you should do?
Uh-oh.
You could just bring me to the shows, and then I can just entertain the people that are waiting to talk to you, so they don't leave. And then once
I think they leave quicker.
I doubt it.
Probably.
Have you heard this show for the last 7.5 months?
We're down to 3 viewers.
Better than 1.
2 of them is our family.
You don't have to give out all our secrets. Moving on.
Yeah.
Question numero tres. Anyone know why sometimes my spindle turns on and off automatically and other times I have to do it manually?
Yes, that's a easy answer on that one. It's more than likely related to the post processor that you're using, because with the auto tool changer post, so when you're, as an example, if you're using Vectric and you look at your post processor list, you'll see some that say ShopSabre ATC. The ATC posts mean auto tool changer, and auto tool changers automatically have spindle on off and spindle RPM built into them. And that's because that spindle needs to be regulated when it goes to do a tool change. However, when you're dealing with a manual change spindle, we make a post that is designed to control those sort of things. And then there's actually a post for just a generic reduced code, doesn't have any on-off. And a lot of times that's because like people who have a Porter cable router from the past or a Milwaukee router, today's world, they don't have the ability to do a lot of that stuff because those are really kind of entry level. Yeah. And they don't have some of the advanced features. So you don't need all that in it. And so if you're just selecting the wrong post, it won't send that signal. So sometimes when you're outputting code, you might be using the post with an M5 in it, and the other times you're outputting without the M5. And that simple difference can be the difference between turning your spindle on and off manually versus turning it on automated.
Great answer.
So there's
Couldn't
your answer.
agree more. Lovely.
Cool. Any other questions? I think you said 3, and that was 3.
That was 3.
Cool. Well, that said, we're going to jump into this week's episode, which is, again, hiring the right help, building a team that gets it. And I think it's a really important topic because everybody in business at some point has to consider hiring. It's just the nature of the business. When you're going to grow, you have to consider if you're going to add more people. And some people choose to hire people. Some people choose to buy CNC machines, for example. There's different things. But today I want to talk about like hiring, because a lot of times that even by adding automation, eventually you add people, because you need people to run the automation and you need to expand. And even if you have 10 machines, you need somebody to run them, right? So there's a common question that people ask is, when's the time to hire, right? Like, when should I hire? And I get asked even by friends of mine who own businesses, like, when do you know when to hire somebody, right? And the key signs to it for me, a lot of times is like when you start being too busy to say yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think the key word there is when you start to feel it.
Correct.
Don't wait.
Yeah, I don't want to wait till it's too late. But like when I start to feel like I can't say yes to things anymore, like somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I'd like you to build this or do this, or hey, our timeline is this. And I can't say yes anymore. I have to start saying, no, we can't do that. Oh, we're too busy. Oh, like when you start to realize the excuse is we're too busy, we don't have enough time. And I put a caveat there because sometimes you use that excuse because you don't want to do it, right? We know businesses out there that turn jobs away because like just not something they're interested in doing, which is okay. You as a business owner have that right to say, hey, you know what, that's not something we're super interested in. But there's jobs out there that you probably do want to say yes to, and you've had to say no to them. And when you have to do that is when I tell you it might be time to start considering hiring, because if you can't meet deadlines that you otherwise would like to be able to, then you're probably understaffed or under-equipped, right?
For sure. And when you tell them people no,
right?
How much future business are you turning away as well because they
Correct.
don't come back? I mean, they're going to be like, well, they couldn't do it last time. They're not going to be able to do it this time, right?
That, and when you tell them no, you force them to find a yes.
Right.
And when they find a yes, where do you go back the next time you have a job? The person who said yes until they tell you no. So you kind of wreck your future opportunities. And so that's of course one situation. But the other one is if you're spending too much time in your business versus on your business. And I think that is the hardest one for business owners to understand, is that in the business is I'm having to, as a cabinet maker, I have to sit in the shop every day and cut cabinets 9 hours a day to keep up.
Yep.
So I can't go work on the advertising, or I can't work on the efficiencies and my material costing or my material sourcing, because I just don't have time to do those things. So I just deal with what's convenient, right? I buy material from Home Depot, which, does it work? Sure. Is it efficient? Maybe not. Maybe you're not getting wholesaler price. Maybe you haven't set up a wholesaler account. You're just buying it like Brandon does when he has to do a Saturday job.
And is it up to the quality you're looking for?
Right.
It might not be.
Maybe not, And so that's another place when you know it's time to hire, is that you're spending so much time in the business, not on your business. And then the other thing is when your growth hits a ceiling. I think a lot of people don't realize it, but like when you feel like you're flat and you feel like you just can't get a step ahead, it's many times because you're just spread too thin, right? You can't invest the time and energy into expanding your growth, or, going out and selling yourself. And I try to remind that to people, because as I noted on the paper here, is that it's sell yourself, when you sell yourself short.
Yep. Because
the only person out there is going to sell your business better than you is you, right? Like there's nobody out there that can. So, so I mean, then you have to start to think about the, thinking long term. I think that's the last thing, to think about here is don't wait, as you said, right? Like if you wait till this stuff all happens, you've waited too long, because you don't want to wait for burnout. And I think that's another area where people sometimes lose focus, is that they wait till their employees are complaining before they do something.
Yep. And then if you do find somebody to fill in, then you're already behind, right? So you're putting a new person in there. You got to take the time to train them and get them to speed. Well, you have employees that are already like not wanting to be there, right? Because they're so burnt out and fed up with kind of how things are going. Well, are they going to train them properly? Are they going to do all the right things to, make that person be as good as they can be?
Well, you got to hire before
before it's too late.
Yeah, before the pain point becomes the bottleneck, right? So there's exactly. Like, it's a good point, because you're going to get a better quality training when they're not burned out, right?
Well, and if, like, say employees have learned to cut corners to get things done quicker instead of doing it the proper way, are they going to train the new person the proper way or the incorrect way that gets it done, good enough, maybe, for lack of a better term?
Right.
It gets it done and gets it out of the shop, but is it up to where it needs to be?
Yeah, and I think another thing is considering part-time help. I mean, I think it helps. It's a good way to step into it. You don't have to jump into a full-time employee right away, but maybe consider a part-time help. You need help twice a week, right? 2 days a week, you need somebody in the shop to help you, or maybe it's office assistants, right? Maybe you just need somebody to help you with the bookkeeping and the record keeping and some of that stuff. So you hire somebody to do that 1 or 2 days a week.
Yep.
I mean, it's stuff like that you need to consider, that part-time help. The who do you hire it's a tough question to answer, but that's another one you get all the time, is who do I hire? I always remind people, I always hire traits over experience. Like, and that's on purpose.
Yep.
Like, I don't necessarily want people who have CNC experience, right? I don't necessarily want to see people who have the experience in the business that I do, because that means I also have to maybe overcome bad habits or things they've learned that aren't aligned with the way we run as an organization. So looking for the people who have strong work ethic, right? Or people who have a strong curiosity. They want to learn more. They're always asking how they can do more. Or people who are accountable, right? They hold themselves accountable. Hey, I screwed this up, and I'm going to tell you that, versus I'm going to hide it, right? Like, I can't teach those skills. I can't teach somebody to want to come to work, right? I can't teach somebody that the job has to get done, and even though it's 5 o'clock, we're going to work till 5:30.
Yep.
I can't teach that. I mean, CNC experience as an example, maybe you're hiring for a CNC operator in your business. Yeah, CNC experience is great. Don't get me wrong, but teachable and being teachable in your mindset is even better, because I can teach you how to run the CNC machine if you're willing to learn it, if you're willing to be there, if you're going to show up. I can't teach you if you're not there.
This reminds me of a quick story real quick. Back in my younger days when I was working in the former business, I worked in, the guy that I worked for owned, well, let's just say it, several golf courses, including the one that I worked at, and had a son that was going through college and graduated with a business degree.
Okay.
And put him in a position to oversee everything, and thought that just because he has a business degree means he knows how to run a business.
Right.
And we went from running a really fun, cool place to like kind of turning it into like a corporate thing where it was
The culture
not
change.
as fun anymore. The culture changes because somebody had a degree in something. It doesn't always mean that they know how to run a certain business. You know what I mean? Like,
education alone won't necessarily make you successful.
for sure. Like, yeah, sure, you know how to like maybe do the behind the scenes business type stuff, but to like change the attitude and the culture and like the feeling of a place just because of that is like
Right.
just because you have a degree or even experience doing something doesn't mean you're gonna be a perfect fit, right?
Right. 100%.
Somebody can always come in with no experience or no knowledge of anything and learn to do the job great.
I think energy will outperform talent any day.
For sure.
Right? If you're just straight up willing to go out and work and put it all into it versus somebody who's just really talented, eventually that catches up to you, right?
Absolutely.
The person who's willing to just keep doing it's going to get good at it. Yep. And I think that's the things that the roles to consider first is ultimately what will free up your time. And like I just mentioned earlier, maybe it's bookkeeping. Maybe that's what you're just not good at. You're not good at accounting. You're not good at like the paperwork side of things. Like hire for that job first, right? I think the office administrative is a good place for especially our clientele. Like the customers that I'm probably speaking to right now, a lot of you, you're very good at building things by hand. You're some of the best craftsmen I've ever, some of the stuff you guys build and I've seen is just incredible. And I can't put a stone's throw to what you guys do. It's incredible. So it's like, don't replace that.
Right.
Don't replace what you're good at. Replace the stuff you're not good at. And maybe that's bookkeeping. Maybe it's organization. Maybe it's negotiation of product purchasing, right? Like whatever that is.
I think going back to what we've talked about in prior episodes, you can't be afraid to do that.
Right.
Like it's okay to be hands off on certain things, right? Get somebody that you know can do it, somebody that you trust to do it right, and let them do it.
I got a buddy of mine who owns 4 businesses. Very, very talented business owner. Very, very terrible communicator. He's probably one of the worst communicators I've ever met in my life. And he knew that. He knows it. His wife jokes about it all the time, that he's just terrible at communicating. So they hired somebody to communicate.
Yep.
Like he's got a communication specialist that works for him. That person communicates with all of his vendors. Everybody. So he understands that he's the weak link there. So like he tells the person that's supposed to do, like what his goals are, and then that person actually like professionalizes it and actually goes out and makes things happen. And to him, that's the best use of his time because he's like, otherwise I just get frustrated trying to solve problems that this person, it's just through communication that they're better than he is.
And then it's going to go back to what we talked about earlier. It's going to get burnt out from doing things you don't want to do or that ain't making you productive.
Well, and then they frustrate other people too because they think that you just don't care, but no, it just sucks at communicating.
Right. So
yeah, it's just one of those things where, and then like scheduling is another thing. You think about schedulers. Production help is another area that I always, tell people, you don't necessarily need to hire somebody who's the best cabinet maker, right? Like maybe you got that already. Maybe you need somebody who can clean up. They sweep the floors, they put the material away, they load the machine, they do things like that. They don't need to be the best in everything else. You just need somebody who's willing to go out and work hard.
Yep.
And maybe it's material handling and finishing and things like that. And the one thing that I like to point out is sales maybe shouldn't always be the first person you hire. And I think a lot of businesses jump into sales. If I sell more, I'm going to be more productive. Well,
if you have nobody that can make it for you, it's not
correct.
going to sell it.
And selling more should not always be the first thing you think of. And the reason I say that is that, again, who can sell better than you? Free up your time because you went into business because you're good at what you do. So you should be able to sell what you're good at and explain why what you're doing is the best. Nobody knows your product better than you. Nobody can explain why you went into business. Right. Your story is unique to yourself, or what you are doing is unique to you. So you should be the one telling your story. And so I remind you that if that's what you're replacing, maybe you're replacing the core function of what makes you unique.
Yep.
Nobody wants to buy from you because you're like every other shop. No, they want to buy from you because of your unique strengths.
And you stand out in the crowd.
Correct. And so I think that's where roles to consider first, or maybe other areas other than sales first. And maybe you got everything else under control and you just can't get enough business in the door, so maybe sales is the next thing you hire for.
Yep.
But like I can tell you at ShopSabre, sales wasn't the first thing my dad hired for.
And if you're not, if you don't have sales coming, maybe there's other things you're not doing right.
Right.
That you can look at to...
Naturally, word of mouth will generate business.
Right. So instead of worrying about making more sales, worry about doing the things properly to get yourself there.
Correct. And then how do you train them right is kind of the next step in this whole process is, I think people overthink this process. You got to start with the basics. When you're working with, teaching people how to do something, don't overcomplicate it. Don't make it too complex. Start with the basics of the job, whether it's, the safeties in the machine. Maybe that's what you're teach them how to run a machine. Teach them how to be safe with it first. Teach them the ins and outs of how to operate this equipment, because that's the first thing that will hold somebody back is when they're not comfortable with something. And I remind people of like firearm safety, right? Or, any type of machinery, car safety, right? When you think about driving a car, you teach them how to operate these things safely so they're comfortable doing it. Otherwise, if somebody's uncomfortable, they're probably going to shy away from doing something.
Yeah, I mean, once you have the basics down, you can kind of learn all the intricate details as you go, right?
You got to be basic first, exactly. And I remind people, you got to walk before you can run, right? It's that simple. It's you don't teach a baby how to become a marathon, runner. Like you teach them how to walk. And so then you have to also remember, don't overload people. I think so many managers are bad at that I hired you to do a job, so now tomorrow I expect you to be fully operational.
Right. Baby steps.
Think, yeah, I have skills, but I don't know how it works in your business. And so the first thing that you need to do with any new employee is build some confidence. Make them believe that they belong, right? That they should be here, and that you hired them for a reason, and that you're confident in their abilities, one task at a time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to learn, I kind of think back to when I started here. Like there's a million things that we do now, but we did one day, one thing, the next day, and just kind of work through everything for a full day.
Yep.
So that you had a pretty good grasp on, what was going to happen. We're prepared for the things that were going to happen. I guess I was never really, those first couple weeks was always super nervous about, what's this person going to call for? How do I find this in the computer? Those type of things. But then once you sit there and just do it a few times, you kind of figure out your way. I mean, like you said, you don't teach a baby to run right away. They crawl. It's kind of the same thing with your job, right? You just crawl through it, work your way through it, and eventually you figure it out and kind of make your own path on how to be successful at what you're trying to do.
Everybody listening to this can learn from one quick lesson, and that is consider your job you do today. And I want you just to think about what you do. And then if I handed you a piece of paper and a pen and said, write down everything you do, could you do it? No.
Probably not. No.
I guarantee you that I could leave you with that piece of paper, and every day you'd add to it. Because you do so many things naturally because of experience.
Yep.
Once you learn to do it, you just do it.
It just happens.
You know what I'm saying? It just happens naturally. And so think about that as a new employee now. I could sit here and write all these things down, but it's going to overload them and overwhelm them. So instead, let's just start with what's natural. Teach them what they need to know to do the basics, and then from there, you move on to the next level. And so that's where, like, in a world of CNC, right? If you're going to add a CNC, how do you train them on a CNC? Well, you use the CNC as a teaching tool, right? Like ShopSabre, machines specifically are designed to be super user friendly, and they're very intuitive, right? And you need to use that to your advantage, right? Show them what you can do with it. Pair your new hire, perhaps, with an existing team member. That's something we do at ShopSabre. We're really big on that. Any person we hire, we don't just like throw them to the wolves, like figure it out, let me know what you need.
Right.
Look, no, I find somebody here who has a lot of experience, and I put them with that person. And I tell them, shadow Nick. Shadow him for the whole week. Learn as much, be a sponge, ask questions. And then I tell Nick separately when that person's not around, Nick, they're going to ask a shit ton of questions. They're going to probably ask stuff that is just annoying because I asked them to. Don't take it personally.
Yep.
Like, just answer their questions, help them out. At the end of the week, let's all download. One-on-one, you and I will talk and tell me how they're doing. And then I'm going to do the same thing with that person. How did Nick do with you? Because then I can get a feel for, does this person actually care? Because Nick's going to be able to tell me, like, they didn't even ask me any questions all week long.
Right.
And then that person doesn't say anything about, Nick was great. But Nick just told me you didn't ask any questions. So how can Nick be great if you didn't have to do anything?
And then you're not, doing very good at your job, and it's because you didn't allow yourself to learn those things, right?
Right.
I think the biggest thing is, working here especially, is like everybody's willing to help, and you always know that if you don't know the answer, just tell somebody, hey, I'm not real sure. I haven't been asked that before, but I'll find out the answer for you. Yep. You can get it. Yep. I think that's the biggest thing, is just be willing to help the people through their first, weeks or days or learning everything that they're learning. Just be willing to help them, and don't just let them out there to figure it out on their own.
Right. I kind of have a rule around here that I try to give everybody a fair shake. Give them the first 30 days to get settled in and get going, and let them ask questions. And sometimes it's repetitive questions, but in 30 days, they'll start to find their way.
Yep.
In 90 days, they're going to be on their own. By 6 months, you're not even going to remember they're new. And I think the big thing about that is documenting some of your stuff that you do, documenting process. A lot of new businesses and small businesses, it's so natural, you don't document anything.
Right.
And so as you grow, you have to start to document processes. And that means telling people what your expectations are. Sometimes it's simple. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This is as simple as it gets. This is what I want you to do. And, I think a step-by-step guide obviously is always nice, but don't overcomplicate it. When people hear that, they're like, oh, I'm not going to sit there and document. You don't, literally, 1, turn on the power. 2, home the machine. 3,
And there's going to be, every employee is going to get through their day and their path of work differently, right?
Right.
As long as you get to the end result of being successful and doing the things properly,
right?
Doesn't really matter how you got there, does it?
5 plus 4, 9 plus 1, right?
It's all the same. So everybody, you could line up 3 people to do the job that I did, and we're all going to get through it in a different way, I would bet.
My math was off there for the record. You didn't catch it.
9 plus 1 and 5 plus 4. I was 10 and 9.
But the point is like, yeah, you should be able to like get to the answer what's convenient for the person as long as they know where you want them.
For sure.
Checklists, right? Yep. Check these things, do these things. I think consistency builds speed and reduces really errors, because if you're consistent in your efforts and you do everything the same 100% of the time, you don't have to question if you did something.
Correct.
Because it becomes a habit that just becomes natural.
Then you just know that you've done it properly.
Right. And that's exactly it. Sometimes just teaching, people the way you want something done is the way you're going to do it, and you're going to repeat that every day. When you come in, we're going to go through the same thing. Because if you do the same thing 5 days in a row, by the 6th day, they're going to come in and do it naturally.
Right. You're not even going to think about it.
Because you know what? Every day I come in, Nick tells me to do this. I'm just going to do it. So when Nick comes up to me and says, we're going to do that, you're like, oh, actually, I already did that. Perfect. Now it's a habit, right? Yeah. So now we move to the next thing. And, I think that's the thing is when people hire, one thing that's overlooked a lot of times is the culture. You alluded to this, and that's why I wanted to circle back around to it, is that you talked about this previous job where they, hired somebody in that obviously related in that case, but changed the culture on you.
Yep.
And I try to remind people that you need to hire people who fit your vision, because hiring on a resume alone, it is going to have shaky results. And that's why we do interviews.
Yep.
Because if you were just going to hire on a resume, you'd look for the best resume on paper and then you just hire them.
Like, sweet, but then you bring the person in and they have just...
Well, they don't show up.
No energy.
Yeah, they don't show up. They don't care. Yeah. Like, the resume looks good because they went to 3 prestige schools, but they don't really care if you're successful.
Right. Doesn't mean anything.
And I think about that as skills can be taught, right? Just because they don't have 26 years of building signs doesn't mean that they can't be as good as the person who has 26 years.
Right. Heck, they could bring new ideas and new creativity to make what you're already doing,
yep,
more creative, better looking.
Yeah. You know what you can't teach? Attitude. Attitude cannot be taught.
Right.
I don't care. You can harp on somebody 100 times to have a better attitude, and it's only going to make it worse. Have you ever tried telling your kid to have a better attitude?
Yep.
How does that go?
It just makes them want to do it more wrong.
They just get pissed.
Correct.
They get pissed, then I don't have an attitude, while they're giving you attitude.
Correct. Yep.
I don't have an attitude. What? Dude, that was literally the attitude I'm talking about. Like, I do it to my 10-year-old all the time. Like, dude, drop the attitude. I don't have an attitude. Well, now you have twice as bad of an attitude. Like, but it's the same thing. Like, you can't teach good attitude. You can teach skills. And I think that's the thing is like, we'll teach you how to be better at making a cabinet. We'll teach you how to be better at creating race cars. I don't know what you're doing or whatever it is your job is. I can teach you the skill. I can't teach you how to be a good human.
For sure.
And I actually saw something one time from a very well-known CEO, and he said, he doesn't care how much money you make him. If you aren't a good person, he'll fire you. And it's the best thing I've ever heard, because he's like, I don't care if they make me the most money in the world, but if they are a terrible human being, I don't want them as a part of my team.
For sure. It's a perfect statement.
And I think it's true, because one good employee, yeah, they might make you much money. They're costing you money elsewhere because other people don't want to work with them.
Yep.
They're not a fun person to be around. They're not an enjoyable. If I got to go spend 8 hours a day with this person, I'm going to go find something else to do.
100%.
And you're going to lose good or better talent because of, how many times you see that on sports teams, right? Really good, talented, gifted athletes that just don't make it because of their attitudes.
Yep.
They could be the most prestigious player, but because they can't get along with others, nobody wants to be a part of that championship team, right?
See it all the time.
Yeah, and it's like you have to build a team that buys into your mission and your vision and treats the job like you do. Because if they don't treat it like you will, if they don't treat the company like it's their own money, they're going to burn it.
Yep.
They're going to burn your money up because they don't care. And that, to me, is the most detrimental way to, hurt your business. Is if you're trying to build the right team, trying to build the right group of people, you have to build from a good foundation. And that is people who want to be there, people who are willing to work hard, build it around that. You can teach them the skills they need to know.
Right. And that once you have even the smallest amount of negativity or bad culture, that's the hardest part to change and get rid of.
I think that's the number one way people find themselves out of a business, is that they allow the culture to dictate the company.
Right.
And negative cultures will create a negative company. And sometimes you could have really good employees, and as soon as they develop that negativity, if you can't write it and you can't get them, to tell you what's wrong and to really, like, some people just don't want to fix the situation. They want to make a problem out of it, right? You have to be okay moving on. And I think as a business owner, it's hard for you to hear that, but don't feel guilty for taking care of your business.
Right. 100%. Just you have to move on from that type of attitude. There's always somebody you can find to put in that spot, regardless of how hard people think it is to find somebody. If you work hard at it, you can find somebody that's going to put positive energy into your business.
You have to lead from the front.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing that I tell people, is that set the tone by staying engaged yourself, right? By being clear with your expectations. Sometimes being clear with expectations is uncomfortable. You have to tell people. If you never tell them, how are they supposed to be successful?
Right. And then you let it go on for so long without saying anything.
Yep.
Then once you do say anything,
now
it's like, well, that's kind of confusing. It hasn't been a thing.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue for 6 months.
All of a sudden, it's a big deal. Yeah.
And the other thing is that I think this is where most bosses struggle the most. Recognize their wins. So many times I see managers quick to criticize, slow to praise.
For sure.
And it needs to be the opposite. Quick to praise, slow to criticize. It's okay. We're all going to make mistakes. You did too. Like, you as a manager have made mistakes. Every time I write an email or I write a negative, review of our processes internally, I will tell people what I think they did wrong.
Yep.
But I'm always quick to tell them that I feel I failed first.
But that's also the key, though, the way that it's approached.
Right.
Like, if somebody just is continually like pointing out all the bad, like you said,
right,
and just always harping on those things without offering a solution, or like pointing out the other things in that situation that were done right, if everything wasn't done completely wrong, that's the bad. If you're just always harping and giving off the negative energy, it's not gonna. It's just not gonna work.
And I think this starts with, like, when you're gonna hire people in your business, hire good managers first, right? Yep. Hire people who are gonna bring better people. Yeah. If that makes sense, right? Yep. Like, help you help yourself. If you don't hire somebody who wants to grow at the same level you are, you're already restricting yourself, because being self-important isn't going to grow your business, right? Oh, I don't need people because I can do it all myself. Well, eventually that mentality breaks the business down. Yep. Because you're self-important and you're self-controlling and you're not going to share, we kind of have a rule around here, and we've always kind of shared it, and Nick, if you want to share it, you can. But the rule about hanging on to information. And we tell people flat out that being the gatekeeper of information is the worst person to be.
Yep.
If you're the only one who knows it, you are the least valuable person in the business, because you're holding the business back.
Right. And I think some people use that to feel important, though, too, right?
Correct.
Like, just because you're the only person that knows it doesn't mean that you're like invaluable to everybody.
Well, here's my question. And this is why I say it, okay? And I'm sure there's people out there right now wondering about my statement just now. The gatekeeper being the least effective person in your business. If that person gets hit by a bus tomorrow, what happens to your business?
It fails because you didn't know what they were withholding.
Because you have no idea how to do anything they held on to.
Yep.
So sometimes it's not about the fact that, like, it's good, right? Yeah, you feel job security. The best and most secure person is the person who I know can train anybody on anything.
Yep.
The person who's willing to train anybody. Like, that person is invaluable to me, because if Nick knows how to do it all but can teach everybody, I can't afford to lose Nick.
Right.
Nick is that guy that I know I can, like, if somebody else in another department gets sick, gets hit by that bus, right? Quits, whatever. I know Nick can jump into that role, help out, and then help me train somebody on how to do that job.
Yep.
But as soon as I don't know what Nick's doing, and nobody else knows what Nick was doing, and nobody can backfill Nick becomes a constraint to the business.
Absolutely.
So as you hire, you need to hire people. And that's why I joked, obviously in previous episodes, we called them the Swiss Army knife. Remember that?
Yep.
Can do everything, but not good at anything.
Yes.
That was awesome. But his
name is Alex. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, Alex.
Jeez. The point of that statement, though, is true, that being able to do a little bit of everything is great, because it means you can jump into different areas. You're willing to help out.
Yep.
Yeah, you might not be the best person at sales, right? But you could follow up with customers, and you know enough about it to backfill. And if a new sales guy hired tomorrow and he needed to know How are other sales guys doing? You can kind of explain the ropes.
Yep.
That is important to me because I might not be here tomorrow. If I get sick tomorrow, unfortunately, I can't control my health, right? I can only control certain cards.
You can do enough to help somebody get through the day until there's somebody to get 100%.
Help the business.
Answer, like you're just making positive steps forward.
The business must go on at every, I don't get to just shut the business down tomorrow.
Right.
So if I get sick, who's going to step in, right? Who can help backfill and know that, hey, this is how we do things. Yeah, it might take 2-3 people to fill your best guy, right? Maybe your best sales guy, he just is that good. It's going to take 2-3 guys to fill his shoes. But can it be done?
Yep.
It can be done. So who could teach those people what your best sales guy was doing? That's what you need to think about from a management standpoint as you hire these people. So honestly, my conclusion on this, like I've got long-winded today, but my final takeaway is hiring isn't about just filling a position or filling a seat, right? It's not about putting a butt at a desk, right? It's about finding someone who's going to help you do things that you struggle with today, whether that's sales, whether that's communication, whether that's whatever, production, but they're going to help your business grow smarter. They're going to help you grow faster because you're going to spend less time being bogged down.
They're going to move you forward and not just take up a place.
It's simple as that. Yep, moving forward. And with the right people and obviously the right processes, because you can have the greatest people in the world in your business, but if you're not teaching them and you're not willing to empower them, they're really going to be a slave to your broken system.
Yep.
Right? They can only do what you're allowing them to do. And if you hold them back, they're going to leave eventually. Nobody wants to come to work every day and feel like they're not accomplishing something. So again, having the right tools like a CNC machine. You can have the greatest cabinet guys in the world, but if they are bogged down by timeline restrictions, they can't get enough out the door because we're doing it the hard way, they're eventually going to find a shop that makes it easy on them.
Yep.
So having the right tools, becoming more effective, empowers these employees to be more efficient. And productivity, however you want to pronounce it, right? Productivity is strongly increased, right? You become unstoppable if you have people who work together in unison.
100%.
Like, if I know that next man up can do it, you are going to be a freaking wrecking ball. You're going to be hard to stop.
And then that just makes it easier for you to focus on the things you need to focus on.
Right.
And not worrying about the other things.
Correct.
That other
Think about how much more you could do in your day if you weren't worrying about doing the actual job itself.
A lot.
Right. You could just think about the next step. Where does the next marketing go? Where's our next product innovation? Where's our next customer coming from? You could focus on so many other things because you're not worrying about where did I put the receipts for that stuff? Right?
Yep.
Like, so think about expanding your team. Understand what growth looks like to you. Is it a process improvement? Is it a people improvement? Consider, is it finding a new vendor that works with you? Maybe it's ShopSabre, right? Maybe you have a piece of equipment right now that you just can't count on. Maybe it's something you don't like. We're not just here about machines, right? We're here about service. We're a company that stands behind our product. So you're investing in more than just a piece of equipment. Yep. You're investing in a culture itself, who we are. We're here to help you grow. So obviously, as always, subscribe to our podcast here, our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, whatever you're watching this on. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us, share it. Share it with some of your friends because you know people in business too that probably can hear, this message and go, hey, you know what? That's a good idea. We need to hire. So don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to share your questions and comments with us. We'd like to hear about your thoughts. Maybe we got it all wrong. We're a bunch of idiots. So tell us that. We understand. It's okay. You can send us an email and let us know what you think we missed. Maybe we missed something here. But it's just, I think it's a good opportunity for you to think about as you hire, how do you build the team that works for you? My motivational quote of the week I wrote down, unless you got something you want to add to this episode.
Waiting for the motivation.
Cool. Motivational quote is, big results require big ambitions. And I think that's the best way to put it is status quo doesn't always grow. Sometimes you got to push the boundaries, right? Think big, act big, do big things.
Well, if you don't have the ambition to go and get results, you're not going to get any.
Right. You got to push yourself.
Right.
Push yourself out of your comfort zone. But yeah, like I said, that's what I got this week.
Did you see the Vicks Vapor Rub truck that flipped on 494 this morning?
No.
It's kind of crazy. There was no congestion for miles.
I heard it coming. I felt it. I just couldn't figure out what it was going to be. This is why I'm not worried about him going on tour with his comedy.
Except for we get emails every week about how great the jokes are.
That's true. We do. Yeah, again, I appreciate the jokes. Nicholas.
I hate change, by the way.
Yeah, that fits into my joke.
Can't stand it in my pockets.
I like change. I like to rattle it around like an old
I
man.
never really use cash anyway, so it doesn't matter.
My kids ask me for quarters every hockey rink we go. Dad, got a quarter?
Can you even get anything for a quarter
Oh,
anymore?
yeah. You get gumballs at every one of these.
Oh, yeah, the never-ending duck
The
machine.
never-ending duck machine as well. Oh, so annoying.
Well, but it actually is never-ending because you keep giving them dollars because they want the specific duck that they have.
It's everybody's a winner.
See that duck down there that's under 16 other ones? I need a 20 so I can get down to it. What are you going to do with all the other ones?
Dad, I got the red one. I wanted the blue one. Well, why'd you go to the red one? It was easy.
Well, there's a sweet Jeep in the parking lot. I can give one of these to.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's so annoying. Ugh.
Jeez.
But, with that, as always, thanks for tuning in to Talking Shop with ShopSabre. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Nick.
Until next time, keep talking shop.